Jack section.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, Jack section. And they didn't say that way.
Sounds great.
I didn't read it too much. I just got the name.
Are y'all right without the lights on there? I think you can see better without our lights on. Hi, Doug. Morning.
Hi, John.
Their room, their. No. Sorry. No, it's so. Renee. I know. When you get off the elevator, it's
Are you here?
people are doing.
I'll just put sunshine.
Okay, you're, it's up here.
You said to me, sunshine.
You're not gonna like it. We'll be looking at the screen.
They told me to start at
So you're gonna have your
I have 2 more minutes.
I have 2 more minutes, okay.
That's Michael.
They might be able to.
Your companion's not gonna do this, huh? Are you an artist? We'll take them. Yours will probably be here, but it's not quite right away.
No, they can just sit wherever they want.
No, that's a dance of the last
They're an independent group that sponsors Sojourn.
Oh, yeah, there's some places where it's very sunny.
There's Nancy and Dick are out there.
So you're very eager to show.
I love these lines.
Right here, that it won't stay in.
You can find a spot where the sun isn't. Check that out and see how good. Now, what do you just have to.
See cats.
Your show is along for the ride.
I watched it and it just, so I know what it's coming.
Good morning, everyone. As you know, I'm Todd of Shelley and Todd. And for those of you who are wondering where Shelley is, in DeWitt, where we live, there is a women's weekend retreat. It's a CEW. So she had to choose which retreat to go to. The curveball on this is she woke up sick this morning, so the Lord said, you don't get to go either. So she's home on the couch. And so because this is an informal group and everybody is kind of wondering how Shelley was doing with her cancer progression, here's where we're at. As of today, Shelley is as cancer-free as any lady in this room. They removed the tumor. She's going to take some radiation and the chemo pills just for a little insurance. God is great. The neat little story that I have for this is the day before Shelley went for surgery, she went in and they measured the tumor. They measured the tumor and it had shrunk. Shelley was telling me up to that, I can feel the prayers. The tumor shrunk. That's not smoke and mirrors. That's not hocus pocus. That's science. So again, God is good. Our first retreat, mine anyhow, I don't know, maybe Sister Ida's too. And I was thinking this morning of the first retreat that Shelley drugged me to here. And I was sitting in a chair back there and I watched a sister come up and very reverently light a candle, and then another sister came and did something, and another sister came and did something. And I'm looking at my watch and I'm thinking, you know, you can increase productivity by 25% if that same person did all three of those jobs. I've learned a little bit since then. So I would ask the sojourners, because I'm not going to ask the sisters of anything, because I'm not going to tell them anything they don't already know. But try to just get caught up in this day. If I can butcher some scripture, Psalm 139 is a psalm I really appreciate. You knew me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. We are right where we're supposed to be today. So if you can not think about the bills at home, any things that come into your mind, maybe push them away like a playful puppy. There's going to be a lot of contemplation today. Just get caught up in it. Sister Ida will take care of the time. Just enjoy this day. I'm going to be the tech guy today. Sister Ida's running the show. In the event you hear me say, uh-oh, I may have started a fire by pushing the wrong button. Look for the exits. And with that, I will hand this over to Sister Ida, and I will assume my position as the tech guy.
Okay.
Well, since this is about contemplation and prayer, we will begin with a very brief prayer. And we'll have a reading, some silent reflection, and then end with the glory be.
During the time young Samuel was ministered to the Lord under Eli, a revelation of the Lord was uncommon and vision infrequent. One day, Eli was asleep in his usual place. His eyes had lately grown so weak that he could not see. The lamp of God was not yet extinguished, and Samuel was sleeping in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. The Lord called to Samuel, who answered, "Here I am." Samuel ran to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me?" "I did not call you," Eli said. "Go back to sleep." So he went back to sleep. Again, the Lord called Samuel, who rose and went to Eli. "Here I am," he said. "You called me?" But Eli answered, "I did not call you, my son. Go back to sleep." At that time, Samuel was not familiar with the Lord, because the Lord had not revealed anything to him as of yet. The Lord called Samuel again for the third time. Getting up and going to Eli, he said, "Here I am. You called me?" Then Eli understood that the Lord was calling the youth. So Eli said to Samuel, "Go to sleep, and if you are called, reply. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." When Samuel went to sleep in his place, the Lord came and revealed his presence, calling out before, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel answered back, "Speak, for your servant is listening."
Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen. Today, the topic is listening and contemplation, because contemplation is really a listening stance, and the two go together very well. Claire and Frances were contemplatives. Frances would spend whole nights in prayer, just saying, "Who are you, God? And who am I?" And he would listen. Claire would sit before the San Damiano crucifix, and she would gaze upon Christ, consider Christ, contemplate Christ. And contemplation is one of the values of the Franciscan life, and you could see why. The two that began the order of men and the order of women were contemplatives. And so we're going to begin this session with some theological reflections on listening. And there's no better place to start than in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth, the moon and the stars, the plants, animals, human beings. And then it says in Genesis, on the seventh day, God rested. Now, rested literally means purposeful contemplation. And that describes a process by where we become quiet enough to see more deeply into life. So we see a God on the seventh day listening, hovering over the world and listening to it, listening attentively. In other places in the Old Testament, we have examples of God listening. You all know the story of Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. And it says in Genesis, "Your brother's blood calls out to me from the ground." Didn't say that God saw what happened. Sure that he did. But God heard what happened. He was still listening to creation. Moses, the Exodus story. That's a familiar story to you also. And God spoke to Moses and said, "And now the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have witnessed the Egyptians' oppression. So I'm going to send you to Pharaoh so that you can lead the people out of Egypt." And so he heard the cries of their oppression in the land and responded to that cry for help. Another familiar story is Sodom and Gomorrah. And I think the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and the communication between God and Abraham really is a model of how we should listen. And this is how God listened to Abraham. You know that Abraham asked that if 50 good people could be found, do not destroy the city. And then went down to 45, 30, 20, and finally down to 10. Now, God knew that there weren't even 10 people there, but he didn't stop Abraham. He listened respectfully to him. And Abraham came to the conclusion himself that God is just. And so that listening to people can help them come to an understanding of what is true. And that's why I see that as kind of a model of listening. This is a psalm you're familiar with too. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. When the poor cry out to God, they can count on being heard. And this picture shows because God is in the midst of the poor. And so he continues to listen to their plight. So those are just some of the examples in the Old Testament of listening. And let's look at the New Testament. We find that Jesus was a listener from his very youth. When Mary and Joseph found him in the temple, it says that he was sitting among the doctors and listening to them, as well as asking questions. It appears that a deeply rooted attentiveness to the word as it came to Jesus through his own life experiences was characteristic of him. His ordeal in the wilderness can be seen as an intense listening experience. And it was an effort to come to a greater awareness of his life's mission. So he spent time in the desert and he just listened. What was he called to do? And one by one they came to him. The blind, the lame, the lepers, the paralytics, destitute people, important people who commanded armies. All of them came with their needs and their stories. He listened to them all. He listened with such intensity that he really heard more than their words. In some, he heard their faith, as well as their pain. He listened and sent them all away, not only physically healed, but with a new sense of inner peace. In others, he heard wickedness and manipulation, and he heard, yes. Is this better? Is this better? I don't know if we can turn it up anymore. I think it's, oh, is it causing feedback? I think they've set this so that it doesn't cause feedback. I think it's preset. And maybe I can talk louder with this. Is this better? Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Nancy. In others, he heard wickedness, manipulation, and he heard beyond their words. And he sensed their deeper intentions. In Mark, it says, next they sent him some Pharisees and some Herodians to catch him in what he had to say. And they came to him and said, is it permissible to pay taxes to Caesar or not? And seeing through their hypocrisy, he said to them, why do you set this trap for me? So he heard beyond the words. And Jesus did not sense what was in people's hearts because he pushed some infused knowledge button. He learned by listening. He searched eyes. He noticed behavior. He found the space for quiet within himself. And he developed that personal sensitivity to people that only comes with the hard work of listening. Need to know what is in people's hearts. He listened sometimes and felt saddened. He felt sorry for the crowds. They were like sheep without a shepherd. And he had pity on the people because they seemed wanderless. He listened and became discouraged. He said to Philip, "Have I been with you all this time and you still do not know me?" That must have been very discouraging for him. He listened and was surprised, as with the centurion. He was astonished at the centurion's faith. Oh, darn. Attentiveness to nature is evident in his references to the lilies of the field, the birds of the air. The readiness of the wheat was like readiness of human hearts. Mustard seeds and fig trees spoke to him of the kingdom of God. So he also listened to nature. The Samaritan woman, after conversing with Jesus, said, "Come and see someone who's told me everything I have ever done." She came away feeling totally understood and accepted. She felt heard. She felt listened to. Sometimes when I pick up the newspaper or listen to the news and hear about the terrorist attack in France or bombing of a plane, the killing of people who are fighting in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, the death squads in Colombia, I'm reminded of that Psalm 130, and it says, "Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. O Lord, listen to my prayer. Let your ears be attentive to my voice in supplication." And the depth of the suffering is, I feel, is sometimes beyond what I can do. But what I can do is to call out to God, and I feel that God does listen attentively to our prayers in supplication. And in our office, we have prayers of supplication that I know God listens to. One time, about probably 30, 40 years ago, I had a profound experience of God listening to me. It was as if God was not concerned with the movement of the galaxies or what was going on in the depth of the ocean. And God put the whole world on hold and listened to my concern. So I have been reminded of the experience periodically. And when I want to know what good listening is about, I remember that experience. When we pray, we come to know that a God who listens. Like God at the beginning on the seventh day, we are called to purposeful contemplation. As with the story of Cain and Abel, our brothers and sisters' blood still calls out to God from the ground. So do we hear those calls, or do we insulate ourselves from what's going on? Do we keep informed of what's happening internationally, nationally, locally? How do we respond? In what ways do we work for peace and stop the bloodshed? Because we also hear the cries of our brothers and sisters, blood who has been spilled on the ground. We also are called to hear the cry of the poor that are in our midst. It could be the materially poor, the educationally poor, the emotionally poor. And in order to do that, we need to listen from their perspective. We need to share what we have with those who have little or nothing. But we have the poor among us, and their cry calls out to us. Like the Israelites who were oppressed, we have today those who are oppressed. We have trafficking, immigration issues, race, nationality. Those people are also oppressed. And these people live in our neighborhoods. And then we have Abraham, who kept bargaining with God. And do we listen to others as God listened to Abraham? Because sometimes through listening, the person gains insight. They come to the answer themselves. And they come to the answer in a much more profound way than if we told them what to do. It is respectful, it's very empowering, and so we would do well to model our listening after that of God and Abraham. In the Eucharist, we recognize the body of Christ, broken, blood poured out. The body of Christ is also the immigrant, the trafficked, the homeless, those who are sick, those we find difficult to love. They need our attention, and they need someone to listen to them. In Isaiah, we read, "Each morning the Lord wakes me to hear, to listen like a disciple. The Lord has opened my ear." And that passage says that the ability to listen, first of all, comes from God, who has opened my ear. And it seems that the prophet found that listening was so important that he identified it with the purpose of waking up. Each morning, the Lord wakes me to hear, So what does that passage say to us? So in closing, I'd like to end where we began, with the creation story, with God resting on the seventh day, God engaged in purposeful contemplation. And we are called to become familiar with that God in whose likeness we have been fashioned, and who invites us to be attentive to all of creation, to become quiet enough to see more deeply into life. It is a receptive, listening heart that equips us to experience the movement of God within us and to recognize the needs of our brothers and sisters. This is what good listening is about, and this is contemplation. Okay, we're going to spend some time in reflection and then discussion. And what I would ask you to do is to reflect on your experience of listening. You've all had those experiences. And I don't know if you can see that. Is that too small? I was trying to get them all on the one page. But think of a time when you felt listened to. And what was that experience a lot like? And how did it affect you? So when you felt very listened to. And then think of a time when you did not feel listened to. And what was that experience like for you? Think of a time when you listened well to other people. Was it easy? Was it hard? What helped you be a good listener in those times? And think of a time when you did not listen well to others, and what prevented you from that? How did you feel afterwards? When you, I didn't really do a good job of listening. And what is it that hinders you from listening attentively to others? So I'll leave those questions up there. And if you would just take some time, we'll take 5-10 minutes. Think of any of those. You may want to focus on just one that really strikes you, or, what has been your experience of listening to others and being listened to? And how has that affected you? So. So now if you would gather in 2 or 3 people together and share what your experience of listening has been about. What was it like? So 2 or 3, doesn't make any difference how you can go to another part of the chapel if it's, but just gather and, what was that like for you? Maybe you'll find someone you haven't talked to before. Okay, just, yeah, 2 or 3 people. Because you want to give people a chance to. That's all right. Whatever, the group will do whatever they need to do. Okay. Can you get, you okay, Rosalie? That's okay, whatever, it's fine. You could all 4 talk.
This morning. Something I was understanding.
One was when I realized I really should have changed my mind. So I'm here. And the other thing, nowadays, around 2000. One of the things that changed me very much early in my life I went to seminary and I was in guidance course and I was teaching 6, 7, 8 and I would go every week and this daughter of charity conducted a class and it was on the scene observing students, the 4,000 people students. And helping teachers to reflect that students what they observed in trying to give students so I really listened to her and then really listening to me. And so that was such a good experience because it changed
How are you? Maybe I'm just upset. My own experience. He was going to conservative. Just what it was. I just did very well. When I graduated, one year when I did studying voice performers, train each other. Plus, I was to make what's the next step? We're trying to train ourselves to see other people. Understand each person. And not worry about the life leave that to the person and take care of that one much and that's how she raised herself there. She was just looking at her. My concern was, will she come back to class? And I think misunderstanding. Will she be
It takes some time. Sometimes they don't hear because so you have to really be patient and do some action and just share. But it's such a sign of and affirmation for that prayer. I just think we need that.
That's what they usually
Yes, absolutely, and that's what's, because a lot of them are not meant through the group, let's just speak what they want. They can't hear as many times. They just, so figure it
basically not like in the middle, impressive.
Teaching students that.
Yeah, like the Lord, if you ask some literature question. What was one of those things? You know, I heard that you recite poetry and I lived around the West Coast and that if you taught French, you know, that you were like, and you got that certainly.
There's a slide.
Okay. Okay, if we could come back to the large group and okay, Rosalie, let's see. Okay.
I can do this.
You can do this, all right. Okay, you're on. You're going to be the tech person.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There may be some things that you'd like to share in the large group and hear from the other groups. And so Todd is going to bring the microphone around for someone who would like to say something, because it will be better to hear. And let us know if you can't hear. We'll try to either project more, or because it is important that everyone hear what's going on. So, yes, you have something to say, Rosalie?
I was just amazed. This is totally off the track, but right up there in that big circle, there was a squirrel. In fact, there he goes. Look, this is I've never seen a squirrel up there before.
Rosalie was listening to creation.
No, the squirrel is listening.
Okay. Todd is willing to bring the microphone to anyone who wants to say something. Okay.
Well, I think that in all of our experiences, that when people haven't listened to us, the feeling one gets is being put down, that we're not important enough to listen to, or that what we have to say is not important. And so that's the feeling you get, and we've all had experiences in that.
One of the things for me is, as a social worker, I want to solve people's problems. And my training is that we allow people to talk and they can often solve their own problems, which is much more empowering to the person. And so we've been talking about this a lot where I work, because we always need that gentle reminder to come back to that. And kind of what Martinelle was saying is we all know that feeling of not being listened to. But I also think when we're not listening at the end of the conversation, we know how we've impacted that person. It's pretty obvious how we may have impacted that relationship or lack thereof because we weren't very attentive. So it's just that reminder to slow down and to let folks express themselves, and they can often figure out their own situations.
I found myself listening this morning to Sister Ida, something I was interested in. I even took notes, so that kind of keeps me from getting distracted. As I'm older now, I don't have some concerns that others do, which is fine. And I did appreciate I thought everything you said this morning was beautiful, just starting with, speak, Lord, I am listening. And different things like that throughout the morning are very, very meaningful and something you can really spend time with.
Thank you.
I asked Teresa if she was going to say it or if I had to say it for her. But something she said in our group, in this Teresa said, was that our expression sometimes speaks louder than anything else. If we're really in tune or really listening, I think we can show that by how we react or what we're doing. If we kind of act distracted or we're not listening or something, it's really difficult for the other person, I think, to share, because you think, well, what's the use? I don't think he or she is listening anyway. And I think that was a comment she made, and I thought that was pretty right on.
Right. Like the nonverbal tells you a lot. Yes, I think that's very true. We speak more than just with words.
Often people do this, and I also do it too. People start telling you something like, my husband died of prostate cancer. Oh, my friend's husband did too, and he blah, 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 blah. And it's like, that doesn't help me at all. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh, let me finish. But I do that too. I mean, people start telling me something. Oh yeah, I know someone who had the same thing. And that's really not helpful. We have to take ourselves, I think, out of the center of the experience of listening. Well, and basically let God work through us. Let's not think we have the answers or we need to enlarge upon what someone is saying to us. I think we get in the way of listening.
I think that's very true, Marty, because it kind of discounts your story. Oh, I had that same experience, but your experience is different. And it discounts your experience when someone matches it and or says, oh, you should have, mine was much worse, Sometimes they like to not only match it, but top it. And it discounts the other person. And I don't think, and I've done that too, but you don't realize what it does and how important it is to really listen.
One of the things that came up in our group was when you're dealing with someone that you've caught not necessarily giving all the truth or taking liberties with the truth, and then, where do you build like not a buffer, but a boundary to maybe protect yourself from being naive or something. And then the ego comes in, I'm not going to be played for a fool, just when my ego gets in the way, listening's out the window. You're not hearing me more than I'm going to hear you. if that makes any sense. Because what I've got to say is way more important than what you're going to say.
Oh, I did. You have to hold it up.
A long time ago, I wrote something that said, "Why do I trip over me in seeking you?" And that was a long time ago. And so I've been learning to listen little by little, and mainly to the voice that Samuel was trying to hear, and to hear that voice in other people. It dawned on me that I have to embrace a poverty that's kind of strange, one that does away with all that I think I know and all my expectations of whatever I want to happen, and just to be totally open to hear what's there for me at that moment. And that's the type of listening that I'm trying to learn. And sometimes it's challenging. And I'm also trying to listen for the good that's hidden there, that to bring out in the other person when they're worried about somebody who's sick, to affirm that person's wholeness rather than the sickness, and to reveal and to create, just like the wonderful medallion we got says. That's it.
I just think in our group that we realize that we all have a problem. And so we all, yeah, it's wonderful to know we're not unique in any way. Yeah,
You're not
we
alone.
can always do a little bit better, or
One of the things that I've learned as a chaplain is that I am more blessed to be the chaplain, is in that I get to listen and to hear and to learn about myself. And the blessing is to learn about myself as I hear others. And learning and just listening to them, I learn about myself and in what God is given me, and that's the blessing that I get in listening to anyone else.
Joan.
One of the things that's difficult is if you're listening to someone and they really expect that you'll be able to give them some advice or some help, and there are times when you feel like, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to respond, what do I do, what do I say? And I guess at those times you just have to be there and hope that somehow your presence or what you do fumbly say after you've listened will help them in some way.
Okay. Okay, Marty.
I think one of the things in those circumstances, one of the successes I had with students down at Ashford was to let them project into, if you had the best job in the world, what would that be if you had your pick? If you were to get, the best grade you could in this class, what would you want to get? and then, go back and say, okay, now what can we do to get there? So you help them project to something in the future, but then they come up with the steps
Thank you,
and you
Donna.
help them along that way. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it is a help at times.
Yes, that's very good. And they help solve their own problems. Yeah, very good. I think that's good. I think we're ready for a break. Okay, we'll take a 15-minute break, or really, we're a little bit early. We're going to come back at 10:30. Okay, thank you. You've been very good.
Do you have a minute? So we were going to discuss in pairs and then go to break and then do what we just did.
Okay. We reflected that, we discussed in pairs.
Then we were going to
We're
break.
going to break, then we're going to come back to the large group.
Is this what we were just did?
No, this is what we just, okay.
So I was thinking we're going to discuss in pairs, then we're going to take a break, and then we were going to come back and do what we just did.
I guess I just did.
Okay. So,
Maybe
you know,
we may be able to ahead of time.
we may be able to just say, because they're going to visit with other people, maybe just see if there's any new reflections have come over that break.
Okay.
Give that a little bit of time.
Yeah, I guess I did.
They were shooting from the hip, lady.
I was trying to, because I kept thinking, because I remember you said presentation, reflection, and question and discussion and prayers. I kept thinking we were going to end up with how.
Okay,
See,
because that discussion is going to take us to.
I shortened this thing, but it seemed, was it long? Was long enough, right?
Yeah,
Because I didn't want to drag it out. Otherwise, then people get restless. And all that.
Right.
So that's why I probably had time, more time than I realized, and I jumped ahead. And if we finish earlier before lunch,
Yeah, so we're still going to come back at 10:30, and then we can,
well,
We can
okay, we
still-
can see. This
I
is
think we
about-
should discuss a little more. I think there might be more reflection.
Usually, this group, it wasn't quite as, because you don't want the, they're usually a lively group.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
If they get a little coffee or something. I'll tell you what, let's come back and we'll
And then
open
we'll
it up to
play
the
it by
group
ear.
again. We'll open it up to the group again, see where it shakes from there. And then, if nothing else, I'll hand the mic to some people and say, what do you think?
What do you think? Yeah, we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I can do that. So
Okay.
that'll buy us a little time. and
Okay,
take us
that'll
up.
buy us a little time because.
Yeah, that'll
and
get
then
us in the
and
neighborhood.
I think we kind of want to keep that afternoon the way it is.
Mhm.
So if we break earlier before lunch, that's fine.
Okay. I wasn't going to stop. Here's what I was thinking. For me to stop filming, to turn that on and everything, it's about a 10-minute process for it to
Okay,
buffer up and everything.
So we'll just leave it running. Is that what you wanted
I
to
thought
do?
we'll just leave her on.
Yeah.
Shut her down at lunch, but we're going to let it run on
Yeah,
the
that will be
15-minute
fine.
breaks.
That will be fine.
Okay.
So was the pace okay?
Yeah, I think it's going very
Presentation.
well.
And I should have projected more. I forget that people do not.
Yeah, and we don't have the ability to turn up our
No, we
mic, so
don't
it's all
have
going to come
ability
from
to
our
turn-
diaphragm.
Yeah.
Turn up your diaphragm.
Yes, I took this. Yeah. And I forgot. And that's what I should have said something at the beginning that, can everyone hear me?
So this reflection on, what is that? Is that another PowerPoint?
It is to some extent. Okay, yes, this one, yes, it's that, give God a tour.
Oh, yeah. That's not a handout that anyone needs? or
No,
anything?
because I'll
Okay.
just leave it up there. It's so simple, they can always remember it. And I'll see, we had planned 15 minutes time for that. Is that too much, do you think?
No, we'll just see how it plays out. I
We'll
think
see, we'll see how it plays out. Because to go through all four of those, I think it's give God a tour of your heart, place in your heart all those you love, place in your heart all those you find difficult to live, and allow God to love.
Yeah, I think it's going
And
to
it's
work
a
out.
simple, I think so, and then that's what we want to.
So not everyone's going to be back at 10:30 on the nose. We'll let them
Yeah, I
trickle
did-
in.
I
We'll open
didn't
up some
want-
more dialogue.
I didn't want to, I gave him 20 minutes for her.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
I was looking at it with Connie, and
Okay.
she seemed to be doing all the talking. I just went over there after a while. I said, I was trying to, pretend I was kind of feeling out when it was time to quit. He said, has everyone had a chance to talk? They all said yes. But she did a lot of the talking. It's
Well,
okay.
Yep, that's
I
the
think
thing we
she
can
needs
control.
that. That she needs that.
So too.
So,
right.
anyway, okay, so far so good?
So far, so good.
Okay.
High five. High five.
But I mean, I changed it. Well, sure, I have to. I had to do something on this. So I something about listening. And so that's why I said I do this. Get sure all the you did so many earlier. I just want to say, pick Abraham work or just bring it on. And I like do you?
Well,
I was trying to figure out what the background to use. It's very simple. And I wanted to get all of that in one thing, so I had to be smaller. Some of them are big. I could, well, because I was not, I could basically. I finished it on 2 slides. So I didn't think it would. I figured that everyone is going because it just they're all the same. I mean, how do you listen? How related to those? Yeah. So, yes, okay. My first try. Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, when did you start the meeting yesterday? So I came before 2. Anyway, no situation. I was trying to be more checks like out there. Well, I think we're just a lot of the time. You were after the yeah, I was writing, and then she did, yeah, and I thought she needs to listen to you people. I watched when I was there, and Shelby said to me, I think we started early. And so I didn't realize it was about 5 to 2. I don't well, I think it was because I think everyone was expecting you almost had actually a few minutes late because politicians always in fact, he would pay attention. He said, don't tell my politician because I was here early. Yeah, well, that's what I figured, that because he gave that. I think there's well, that's all you do. I agree with that. It is. He always says, I was amazed. Yeah, that's right.
Third ward, second. And Whittier is closer to us. Well, about
Logically,
we should
we
go
would be
there.
here, but I'm sure. Why should we be? Even people with a pilot pocket system come home. Trying to figure it out. What's it like now? Because Dixon said that too.
But yeah, I thought we were. We got it all. Go. I almost
Well, my parents surprised me. I mean, community college, 120 schools. And she, I told her, I thought for sure she was. Because I'm trying to get to the platform. Is it good or poor? Why not? You think I heard sweetheart is kidding that we've got so many girls like everybody else. I got 3 of them. I got 2 youth that are 150 calls. And we don't give them.
We were at HFACC,
Is right.
Colorado, Hillary for, Hillary for,
We don't want to have it. And I told him. And he said, I said, I wish he was doing that. Yeah, I wish he was doing that. And I said, he doesn't have a chance. I said, I know. So, okay.
when Bruce County.
Interesting. Well,
Particularly because Hillary had Bernie.
I mean, I know you can do like a workout. Start now. But I'm afraid
I keep back and forth here. I agree with that part. I didn't think it can be.
yes.
I give up to I see it. I feel like it's free of all that, but somehow I would think.
She knows, and she knows the crooks and crannies and that's right. And she knows. But he's been talking the same way he is for 40 years, so he is.
They're already saying that. So, what do they say? I want to look back. Somebody at one time did. I think that's it. I haven't heard that. He's really.
Okay. Well, are we gonna have to move, Marty?
What? Oh, the sun, yeah.
The other side?
Yeah, that sun is hard.
I think it's going well, Ida.
Okay, good. I'm glad. I should turn this off.
The sun gets moved out of there. They moved.
Is your squirrels right there?
So my squirrel's not there now.
Is a squirrel still there? I see it.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out how to get done. Mine, the other day was up on the third, there, and it kept looking down, and I kept saying, don't jump, don't jump.
I've never seen it.
I got through it okay.
Oh, you did.
Yes, I should have put it in. It is, I'm glad. Or it
Yes, I should. Oh, man. I guess I should thank you. I guess I should thank you for helping me get home.
Okay, you may need to move if the sun is in your eyes. We can't do anything about the shades with that, so if you want to move to get the sun out of your eyes, feel free to move around.
Rosalie's not out there getting that squirrel, is she?
She's still watching the squirrel, so she's not listening at all. She's watching the squirrel on the thing. So that is, oh, God is all over. Okay, she is listening to God in nature. So that is very good. This group is usually a talkative group, and we don't want to miss anyone's words of wisdom. And so before we begin the next session, if anyone has anything they'd like to say before we move on, please feel free to do so. Todd has the mic. Hold it up close.
I'll jump on. There's something that came up in our group, and I think it has a lot to do with the political climate right now, how we can't turn on the TV without, aggressive politicians or walking outside the building without tripping over a politician. Everyone has their frustrations with, how they want things run and how they want the taxes spent and how they feel on immigration and other reforms. And to look at the politicians and not be heard or to get lip service is just so frustrating. And I just found that to be, kind of tying into this as well.
Okay.
You know what, in the listening.
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A lot has to do with the context of what you're listening to. If you're listening, like we were listening, downstairs, we were talking about fibromyalgia, and it was interesting. So now if somebody said something that I wasn't interested in, I might not, or if it was someone I didn't care for, and maybe I wouldn't, or I did, I not care for, but like that I didn't know was, just, it depends on what the context is you're listening, or a real big thing is if you're trying to get your point across, then are you really listening or are you thinking of what you're going to say next? And,
Very good, yeah. So it depends on how open you are and put everything else aside.
What you're listening to.
That's right.
This is just crazy, but, we just mute the TV when any commercial comes on because we don't want to listen.
What I noticed is that none of us dealt with how we feel when we don't think we're listened to. And I think that's, something that probably touches all of us, but you really would hope that maybe somebody was listening to what you were saying, and all of a sudden, you're all over the continent, you know, and you know very well that you weren't. And, you know, that touches you a little bit.
That was my first comment when I'd asked for contributions, so maybe you weren't listening to me. I said, all of us have had experiences where people didn't listen to us and we felt put down. We felt that our ideas weren't important and that maybe we weren't important.
Yeah.
I did say all that.
I think it's interesting that you know, it comes down to, I'm not important.
Right.
When people don't listen to us, I'm not important enough for someone to hear the words I say. That's.
And I think that this is an example of when someone asks a question, then when someone answers, you're busy thinking about what you're going to say. And you don't know, at least this is what I do. Now, when my turn comes, I'm going to say this and that. So they're halfway through their thoughts, you know, before I might be really listening. And I think the thing that helps me the most is to try to live in the present moment. And if you're really doing that and listening, you're looking at the person, you're giving them your undivided attention. And that's really hard with some people who are long-winded.
Well, when people listen to me, I guess I don't take it personally. I just think they don't give a damn.
They don't.
With the political climate the way it is, and because of many things, I've come to realize that when I'm trying to make a decision, I have to realize that I am not a group of people. I'm not a collective identity, I'm a person. And for answers to what I should be doing, I guess I have to be the change I want to see, more than trying to tell anybody else what to do. And that's about it.
There was one slide up there that really struck home with me, and that was the father talking to his daughter. And with no offense to your gender, raising a teenage daughter was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. How hard it is to have your knowledge and, you know, want to share it with this beautiful little creature that thinks you're the dumbest thing that's ever been put on the planet. It is so frustrating, and still when they share, you know, you want to be attentive and listen, but it's not as important as what you want to tell her. So at any rate,
It gets better as I get older.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for what you have shared, and in the large group too, everyone then benefits from your experience of being listened to and of listening to others. Well. Okay, I'm going to talk about a reflection that is somewhat of a listening. It's very a contemplative way to pray. And I learned this from an Amityville Dominican who would teach children how to pray. It is very simple. They caught on. It is not necessarily just for children. It is children of all ages, whether you're 100 or 105, like Bertha is, it can be used. And it is one way to pray. So I just want to have you have the experience of doing this and see what it's like for you. It may be something that's helpful. It may be something else that's helpful. But I just offer it to you as a way to pray. First, she would tell them, give God a tour of your heart. That means, how do you feel about what's going on in your life? What is going on, that's the tour. But also, how do you feel about what's going on? That's the very first thing. Very simple. And you can spend as much time on that as you want. Maybe you only get to this first part. But give God a tour of your heart. What's going on in your life? And talk to God about it. Then place in your heart all the people that you love. And you and God love them. That's an easy part. Place in your heart all the people that you love, and you and God love them. Now comes the harder part. Place in your heart all those people that you find difficult to love. And you and God love them. You may spend a lot of time on that. And finally, allow God to love you. And sometimes that's a difficult one. May not be easy, but it's a very simple way to pray, and yet it is a very profound way to pray. And you can see why children can catch on to this. It's not difficult. It's not rocket science. It's very simple, and yet can be very profound. So give God a tour of your heart. Place in your heart all those you love, and you and God love them. Place in your heart all those you find difficult to love, and then love them, you and God, and then allow God to love you. And it's a nice movement through the prayer. Very nice movement. And so we're going to spend some time just doing that this morning. So I think we'll just stay in the chapel for that, and I will call you back with the bell, probably 10 minutes or so we'll do this, or I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But just be quiet yourself inside, and see if you can do part of this prayer, all of it. Don't rush. Okay. If anyone wants to say something about what that experience was like, was it easy? Was it difficult? Or what? Or, sometimes what happens in prayer you just treasure rather than share. But it is beneficial sometimes for the rest of the group to hear what other people's experience has been. So Todd, again, will run around with the microphone.
If you don't mind, Sister Ida, I'm one of those people who love what everyone has to say. So if you don't mind me going rogue, I would like to just hand the microphone, share if you want, pass it on. If you don't want to share, that would get everyone an opportunity to speak and an opportunity for everyone to hear and learn.
You don't have to.
I believe that in giving God a tour of my heart, I found how simple my life really is and what few cares I have to put there. And I just was so thankful and so much gratitude that I have learned to let Him take over and to not try and control everything. It's just so much easier to live that way.
Well, I find with giving God a tour of my heart that right now I have a lot of things going on. Some things I'm questioning about. When my sister passed away, did I do enough to help her? And what kind of come to me when I was doing this right now is, did I think I could save her from dying, and was I trying to do God's job? So I just need to give that back to Him and quit trying to take over His job. So, and putting together all the people that I love, that was an easy part of it, and for God to love them too. So, and that's about as far as I got.
Fine.
I never thought that I had any method for when I prayed, and yet I felt.
Talk louder.
I thought I didn't have any method when I prayed, but I felt very comfortable with that, and actually, I think I pretty much do that, maybe in a different order, and maybe not the same way every day, but I think it's a really great method, very simple.
This was very comfortable for me, and I enjoyed it. It wasn't long enough.
Oh, I see. I didn't know how long, and I didn't want to make it too long, but.
I guess in my experience of prayer of the heart, I am so focused into God's continual infinite love for me that that's where I start instead of including it as step 4 for allowing God to love you. I just experienced that love of God so consistently in my life that that's where I start when I do prayer of the heart.
The first part, the tour of the heart, was, I probably go too fast because there's a psalm that says, Lord, you probed me and you know me, you know when I sit and when I stand. And then I get to the place where you love all the people. And that's such a comfortable place that for me, that's a place of oneness. And when I get to the part about difficult people, I have to realize that people are difficult because sometimes I'm afraid, and that's when I'm getting in the way of myself. And the last part, allowing God to love you, is the part that I need to spend more time on. That's the neat part where everything becomes praise and thank you, and that's cool part. And I think it's a really neat, it's a good method for me because it's so simple.
I thought it was an interesting exercise. I found it, the first three, really pretty easy to work through, and I thought kind of interesting. The thing that surprised me, though, was I struggled more with the last one for some reason. You know, allow God to love you. And yet I know she does. You know, I know God does. And yet I struggled with that one a little bit, but I thought it was a good exercise.
I just don't know how to have God love me or to love my other people that I love or I don't love. I mean, he could touch me and say I love you and say that to my other loved people, but I really kind of struggled with how to have God love me.
I've found in the past that any exercise like this works better for me when I let my mind wander. So I let it wander while I was giving God a tour of my heart. And when I felt she was done, I went on to the next two, which again were, like Lou, were pretty easy. And allowing God to love me, I thought, well, I'm going to let my mind wander again and believe, know that it's happening.
I spent some time on the third one, third part, to the people you find hard to love, difficult to love, and you and God love them. I was thinking of people, the suicide bombers, the terrorists, ISIS, murderers, they need God's love. So my prayer is to pray with God, to ask God to be with those people and to love them and to convert them to love rather than hate people.
I really liked how simple that was laid out. I often get asked, how do you pray? And I never really know how to answer that. Kind of like Rosalie was saying, I think that this is stuff that I already do on a regular basis, but to lay it out like that for folks who have the desire to learn to pray, I think is very helpful.
I thought it was very well laid out and very simple and very easy. I didn't get through all of it. And for me, one of my practices right now is that I'm learning, that I'm going back to using journaling as part of my technique. So one of the things that I plan to do is to take this sometime when I have some time to sit down with an hour or so and actually journal this. So and I've got it written down so that I can actually sit down and journal it, because it will take at least an hour.
Thank you.
Well, I've said this a lot, and that is, in my old age, I've come to believe what I learned in first grade very profoundly, and that is God is everywhere, including in my heart, in everybody else's heart, and everybody else's being, and wherever, and God is. And for those people that seem to be difficult to love, I think maybe they haven't experience love or don't know they are loved, and somehow maybe that's a calling for me, is to make those people know they are loved and lovable.
I like, I liked the method. I thought it was easy to follow, and I thought it was good for me. I thought it was interesting that I had a lot of people that I love, and that whole area of number 2 was crowded. Less in number 3. I didn't go worldwide the way some people did. It was more my own relationships, with personal relationships. But one of the things I found especially interesting was, as I was thinking of those people, there were more people that I wanted to put up in number 2. So then I was, God, I forgot about these people in number 2. I love them too, and I want you to love them. So.
I would have to say I felt the same way as Martinelle did. When I heard Dorothy, I thought, well, I didn't go beyond the realm of, and I thought, what a good way to express, though, about people who are doing things that we're so opposed to, that we bring them into God's love. And maybe, I don't know, our love may be a little stingy in that area.
Well, one of the things that struck me as I was doing this was that I find sometimes people that I love sometime, not all the time. And I guess I was puzzling over that, why is that? Why is that? That you find some people lovable today and not tomorrow, but I think it was a reality for me.
Well, I got to number 2 and there was just so many people, and they were dead or they were alive or they were whatever. And then I got to number 3 and I thought, well, I'm glad this is a smaller section than the other part. And I also found people in there that I wanted to put up in number 2. And I also went beyond us. ISIS and murderers and things got in there. And, but number 2 touched me the most. I mean, I was just so happy.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, that's fine. No. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to say anything.
I'm last. I think everybody said everything, but surely I'd like to do this more often.
Okay. Can I say one more thing? Yes.
One thing that come to mind as I was listening to everybody else, and I hadn't gotten that far, but the 4th one, allow God to love you. One thing I heard years ago, God thinks we're all worth loving. That's why he sent his son to die for us. So I think we just need to give ourselves permission to let God love us.
And I was a number 3 or 2, and there are 2 people in my life specifically that I struggle with, a coworker and a brother. So I got down to number 3, and so here's those 2, myself and Jesus sitting in my heart, and it is a very awkward room, and we're all kind of looking around, what are we going to talk about? And then I start hearing from the Lord, look at him. What are you seeing? A scared child? Someone who can't express themselves well, doesn't make great decisions. And I found myself feeling compassion for them and trying to understand them rather than trying to keep them at bay because they're trouble. So that was mine.
Okay. Thank you Rosalie wants to say something.
Thank you. I was thinking of years ago when we spent a month at Epworth, and we began with a guided retreat. And I walked in with my books because I knew exactly what I needed to do to get out of this retreat. And I walked in and the retreat master listened to me a bit, and then he challenged me to put away my books and not read at all until he saw me the next day. And he said, just let God love you So I went for a walk and let God love me. And do you know, I still remember that experience. And I still try to do it because it made a very big difference in my life.
Okay, anyone else have thought of something after you pass the microphone on? I really appreciate your sharing, and it really was helpful to hear how God touches people. And God touches people in many ways, and you just heard how it happened. We're finished with the morning session. We will come back at 1:45. You have a little time before, lunch is at 11:30. So you have a little time before lunch, about 15 minutes before lunch, then lunch, and then we'll come back here at 1:45, 12:45. Okay? Thank you all very much. Okay.